Travis has an amazing experience in 1975 with UFO encounter. Mr. Travis, can you talk to us about your experience with UFO?
Well, it was the middle of the day, middle of the week, a Wednesday, November 5th, 1975. I went to work as usual with 6 of other men that were on the crew with me. And we were cutting trees in the forest in the mountains of Arizona. And after a day's work, it was starting to get dark and we were headed home. And we saw the glow of light coming through the trees. And it was very strange, but not really alarming at first. But when we finally got to where we could see the source of the light, we saw this UFO hovering near the road. And it was so close, there was no mistaking it. You know, you could have thrown a rock and hit it. It was, one of the guys in the back yelled out, "It's a flying saucer." And I threw open the door and I got out of the truck and I started towards it because I thought it would take off before I got very close. But it didn't leave, so you know the rest of the crew were getting pretty anxious and were yelling at me to get away from there. But when I got up close to it, it started to move and got louder, and so I jumped into a crouch and decided to do what the crew was yelling at me to do, is to run back to the truck. But when I stood up, my upper body got so close to the craft that some energy jumped from the craft through my body and knocked me 20 feet through the air. And the crew, you know, it was so violent that the crew thought I had been killed. And they said, he's dead, let's get out of here. So they drove away. And after they overcame their fear, they came back to see if they could help me, but they saw the craft leave and it had already taken me. So when they went to the sheriff's department to report it, the lawmen did not believe them and thought that they were making up a story to cover up for a murder, that they were that maybe there'd been a fight and they just were trying to cover up for what they'd done. So they called in the state police lie detector expert, and he tested the men, and they proved that they were telling the truth, that they saw the UFO. So when I was hit by that blast of energy, it was so violent that you know, the crew immediately thought it had killed me, because it sent me flying through the air. And one of the guys said he thought, oh, he disintegrated, it blew him to pieces. But the other crewman said, no, he was in one piece when he hit the ground. But another crewman said that the most frightening thing about coming back to him was that he thought he would see my body in a really horrible, burned up condition. But when I regained consciousness, I was on board the craft, and at first I didn't know where I was. I thought I was just in a hospital. And then I remembered approaching the object in the woods. And then when I could finally focus my eyes, I saw these creatures standing around me, lying on this table. And I just freaked out. I became hysterical with fear. And I frightened them away and tried to find a way out of there. A human-looking, I think an alien being that looked like humans, came in and took me out of this craft. And he took me to a room where there were some other human-looking beings like him. And they wouldn't answer my questions, and they forced me onto a table and put a gas mask over my face, and I lost consciousness. So I think that what happened there was that I was accidentally injured by this injury, by this energy, and that they had to take me aboard in order to revive me. And so that took 5 days. I don't remember everything, but I think there's a lot more that is blocked from my memory through some kind of hypnosis. And, at the time that the crew passed the lie detector test, the president of the American Polygraph Association said that the odds were 1,000,000 to 1 that there was any kind of a mistake with the test. But now there's been 16 past tests, and I've passed 5 of them from 3 different examiners with years of experience in law enforcement. And so, I think the odds would be far more than 1,000,000 to 1. But, that's not enough for a lot of skeptics. They try to explain it away any way they can. And the silly efforts to explain it away included that the hypnotist had planted these memories in my mind, or that I'd had a temporary psychosis and became insane and just believed it happened to me, or that I was hallucinating on drugs. But I had tests run by the county medical examiner that proved there were no drugs in my body, and also that was on several polygraph tests that I took about drugs. But the thing that the news people did not ask was, well, if this was just a delusion, how do 7 people have the same delusion? That just doesn't happen. Not from drinking or alcohol, or 7 people don't become insane at one time. It's just silly effort to explain it away. One skeptic tried to say that what we really saw was the planet Jupiter, just a little point of light way off in the sky. This was very close, less than 100 feet away. We could see it clearly.
When you entered the spaceship, did you see beings?
Yes.
How they look like?
They were small beings, less than 4 feet tall, hairless, very large eyes, and a stare. When they stared into me, it was a very disturbing experience. But the other beings that I saw looked like human beings. Some people call them Nordics, but I didn't know anything about those terms back then. I don't think the term grays had ever been used at that time.
So there were 2 kinds of beings inside the ship. The small one with big eyes, and the other one that looks like human. How they look like?
Well, the humans looking ones were tall and very healthy looking. They would pass in a crowd on Earth. I think there was something kind of unusual about the eyes, but I never could really figure out what that was in order to work with an artist to try to put it into the drawings. But if they were walking around us, I would probably recognize that look, but the rest of the people here would just think they were just somebody that just a normal person.
I understand. And how long have you been outside? Inside the ship or in any other place? Outside the society convivence?
Well, I was gone for 5 days and 6 hours and before I was returned. And I woke up on the highway outside of the town nearest where this happened, and I called my family and they came and got me. But it's been 38 years since that night, and it still affects me very powerfully to this day to talk about it.
And how you were when they encountered you, they found you, how were your situation, your clothes, your signs in your body, were there any evidence that something strange happened to you?
Well, in the movie, they portrayed me as being naked when I was returned, but I was not naked. I was wearing the same clothes as when I was taken. The doctor gave me a very thorough exam, and everything looked healthy. There was no signs of starvation. There was some indications that I was dehydrated. So they must have fed me in some way, and perhaps not quite enough water. But
Signs in the body.
yeah, the X-rays were totally normal. One thing that was odd was a brainwave scan discovered an unusual pattern in the brain. And the technician that gave me the EEG did not know who I was or what had happened. So when he made a note on his report of this unusual pattern, that's more significant, since he, had no idea what. He was just told to look for signs of injury. And, I had EKG, EEG, blood and urine samples, X-rays, just a psychiatric test, a whole battery of psychiatric tests, and 5 polygraph tests, everything, even voice stress analysis and handwriting analysis. And
And after that, have you had any other experience with extraterrestrials?
well, back then, the skeptics made a big deal out of the fact that I had a relative that had seen a UFO 8 or 10 years before. But the surveys showed that 1 out of 7 people have seen one. So rather than that being some kind of a suspicious coincidence, it was to what was to be expected based on the statistics. And so, the idea that if you've ever had more than one experience, that makes your case not valid is just, it was a common belief at that time, but it's not got any basis in fact. So, I'm often praised for coming forward to tell my story, but it's not really deserved because I had no choice. By the time I was returned, it was worldwide news, and there were news crews from other countries in town before I was ever even returned. And I tried to avoid the media at first, but that didn't make the story go away. It just made the story more negative. So I found I had to do the interviews just to set the record straight and prevent all these crazy efforts to explain it away from, getting out to the public and misleading people.
In that time, when your fellows in the forest went to the police to talk about this experience, was it registered as a case, a police case, or no document about this case?
Oh, that was very well documented. I actually got a lot of copies from the police file after the case was closed. And the sheriff's men were very struck by their interview with the men when they came to report this, because some of the men were still crying. They were very shaken and looking very pale, and so they knew something very terrible had happened, but they thought it was because they'd witnessed a murder or something, and they were afraid of getting the death penalty or going to prison. But that was all disproved. A lot of us have taken more than one lie detector test, so,
When you saw the human being, did you feel yourself more comfortable?
Yeah, it was very reassuring to see the human being. I thought he was there from some Earth-based agency. At first, I thought it was just like military or police that were there to rescue me, and it was only, you know, a little bit later that I realized they were probably just aliens that looked like us, you know, and so I started to fight back and resist them. So they rendered me unconscious.
But when you were inside the ship, there was the big eyes guy, extraterrestrial, and the other one, the other human, transmitted to you some good feelings. Was it more comfortable to you? Do you feel it better when you saw the human one?
Yeah, you know, I immediately thought I was rescued. So when he wanted me to go with him and take me out of that craft, I was happy to go because he was taking me away from these horrible creatures, and so yeah, I was very much reassured by the presence of beings that looked like human beings.
Did you smile? Did you say bye for them, or they just left you unconsciousness?
Well, I was so traumatized, so you know, hysterical that, you know, I never calmed down in the presence of the humans. But when I woke up after they rendered me unconscious, I was lying on the highway, and there was a light above me, and it was nighttime, and I looked up and I saw the UFO hovering there, and then it just shot up into the sky. So no, they weren't waving by or anything like that.
Great. Travis, amazing history. Thank you very much for your interview.